12 News at 10.
The lesser prairie chicken is officially removed from the endangered and threatened species list. Some conservationists worry that this will lead to the bird's extinction, which has already lost around 80 to 90% of its range. Thomas Lynch has more on the removal of federal protections and how lawmakers are now reacting.
Yeah, Rachel, the lesser prairie chicken population covers parts of 5 states, but at this point they are a private land species. That means with the loss of federal protection, conservation will be up to landowners, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
They really are a pretty spectacular critter.
Matthew Bain describes the lesser prairie chicken as a symbol species for grasslands.
Their habitat really represents intact, native, diverse prairie.
And thinks their diminishing population could signal worse things to come.
If we lose species like this, then most certainly we're going to lose all those services that grasslands are also providing.
It's why some are concerned with the Trump administration's decision to remove the lesser prairie chicken from the endangered and threatened species list.
The sooner we can get protections in place, the sooner we can bring them back to recovery.
In a statement, U.S. Senator Jerry Moran calling it a major win for Kansas farmers, ranchers, and rural communities. Moran applauds the local conservation efforts instead, referring to the federal regulations as burdensome. And a similar reaction from Kansas Representative Ron Estes, calling it a massive win for common sense, saying bureaucrats have tried to weaponize the Endangered Species Act to implement a hostile land grab. Jason Rylander with the Center for Biological Diversity disagrees.
The science is quite clear. The lesser prairie chicken has lost more than 90% of its range. There are only a few thousand birds left in the southern distinct population segment, a few more than that in the Great Plains.
Rylander says the species have been listed as endangered twice before, and political reactions do not justify the bird's extinction.
It is because of the fear, which is often overstated, that those protections will lead to some sort of land use restriction. In reality, the Endangered Species Act is a very flexible statute.
Bain says even with the chicken's entire protection being up to the landowners, they may still be in good hands.
It's because of that land ethic, really, that these ranchers, that these land stewards have, that we're even able, to still have and maintain this population of prairie chickens.
In Wichita, Thomas Lynch, 12